Hello everybody and welcome to FantasyInsiders.com. My name is Dan. Most of you know me across the industry as MrTuttle05. For those of you that have been following FantasyInsiders.com for the last couple of weeks here, you may have grown accustomed to my weekly article regarding FanDuel titled Top 5 5K or Less on FanDuel. Instead of rolling out that article here this week, I kind of wanted to do something a little different for you guys. I did get asked a little earlier here on Twitter this week from Jeff Collins. He asked myself, Dave, and Ben kind of how we approach each week in the NFL and what some of the first things that we look at are. I told him that, and this is true, some of the first things, or the first thing I really do look at, is just pricing. So what I'll do is I'll go to each individual site and really just scroll through the player pool, see if anything jumps out at me through the initial run through of the player pool. So that's something that I wanted to do here as opposed to ruling out a FanDuel article this week. I just wanted to go scroll through the player pool with you guys, point out some of the guys that I think may be underpriced or that I think are at least priced interestingly and may deserve a little closer look this week when you guys are compiling your rosters. So let's take a look here. We'll start out with the QB position. As we scroll through the $5,000 range, you're not really ever going to get anybody there that's playable unless for some reason you're getting a spot start. I think there's some speculation that Colin Clemens is going to start this week against Seattle, but that's someone you obviously don't want to run out there. Christian Ponder, believe it or not, would be an interesting start this week against the Packers, but it looks like Josh Freeman is actually going to get the start that was just announced. He obviously looked horrible Monday night against the Giants, but for $5,800, as crazy as this does sound, he may be someone that you would actually possibly find yourself considering. I think this game will actually take similar shape as far as play calling for the Vikings as it did against the Giants. They actually let Freeman unleash the ball quite a bit. That was partially due to the fact that they were down much of the second half, but you obviously are expecting the same this week against Green Bay. So Freeman could get a decent amount of opportunities to throw the ball, and he obviously is a threat running the ball as well. It's probably someone I'm not going to run out myself, but it really could warrant an interesting GPP play. Some other guys that are jumping out at me here, kind of in the $6,800 range, you're looking at Terrell Pryor and Eli Manning. Pryor's obviously always provides value because he is a dual threat. He's going up, it looks like, against Pittsburgh in Oakland. Pittsburgh's defense is getting old. They are getting slow. And he could provide a problem for that Pittsburgh defense. I remember a play, just to kind of sum up the Pittsburgh defense getting a little older and slower. I do recall a play earlier this year, I want to say maybe week 4, when the Vikings played the Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember Greg Jennings caught maybe like a 10-yard reception, and he ended up busting it for a 70-yard touchdown. But if you take a look back at that tape, it was just ridiculous to watch. And I mean, Jennings is a elusive guy, but he's not a barn burner by any means. But if you watch that tape, it looked like the whole Steelers defense was just in quicksand. So Pryor is an interesting play this week just because he does provide that dual threat ability. Eli Manning, don't get me started on Eli. I did start him this past week against the Vikings on Monday Night Football. I was looking, obviously, for a significantly better performance than what he was able to do. But I was mainly surprised during that game due to the conservative play calling that the Giants did. I really wasn't expecting it. You know, you have Peyton Hillis, who you just signed, as well as Cox, who was coming off the practice squad. I wasn't really expecting them to be a high priority in the Giants' offense, but that is how it turned out to be. So it's a little concerning that they took that approach Monday night. don't see him being that conservative here this week. So Eli, in my opinion, actually is possibly in play this week. So that's someone to take a little closer look at. If we're looking at players in this range, Vic's obviously going up against a weak Giants defense, but he's expected to possibly get the start here this week. But I can't see. I think the risk outweighs the reward there. Kaepernick is another dual threat QB who's been playing a little better recently, and going against a horrible Jaguars defense, I could see him providing some value there. And then if you look here at the top tier guys, you're looking at, you're going to pay for what you get. You should get pretty solid performances all from Breeze, Rodgers, and Manning. Manning could be interesting coming back off the loss. It could be interesting to see how he pans out. I think he probably does pay off his price tag this week. So now let's go take a look at some running backs here. Again, I always do start with the minimum price guys and scroll my way up to see if there's anyone that jumps out. Obviously, the only guys that are going to be minimum price that jump out are going to be fillers that are maybe making spot starts due to injury. Peyton Hillis is a guy that jumps out right away based off of his performance on Monday Night Football. He could warrant some playing time this week against a weak Eagles defense. Keep an eye on him in the Brandon Jacobs situation. I'm not sure how the Brandon Jacobs injury will play out and if he's expected to play or not this week. But Hillis could be an interesting minimum price guy to run out there. As we keep scrolling up here, I'm not seeing a whole lot here for the remaining minimum price guys. Never been a fan of McGahee. He's not going to provide you enough value to run out there each week. He kind of hit into a lucky Thursday night performance where he got those, I think finished it with a touchdown and like 76 yards on 26 carriers or something around there. He's not worth it even if he's going to get a decent amount of workload. Andre Ellington is interesting. He's a guy that I know received a lot of hype leading up into Week 7's Thursday night game against the Seattle Seahawks. He's a guy that I think people were a week early on. I remember a couple weeks ago looking a little more into Andre Ellington and kind of thinking that he wouldn't really be in play until Week 8 or this week, where he does face off against the Atlanta Falcons. I think it is a much better matchup for him this week than the people that played him in Week 7 against the Seahawks were getting. So I think Andre Ellington could be a decent play if he does tally up those receptions. He obviously has the big playability as well. Joseph Randle is another guy you're going to want to keep an eye on as far as injuries go. If DeMarco Murray can't go again, Randle did get a decent amount of time at running back in Week 7. He got a lot more touches than what I was actually expecting. I thought they were going to drop back and pass a lot more than what they did. So Randle's certainly in play if DeMarco Murray's not able to go. You continue to go up here, I think you see your first, in my opinion, mispriced guy of the week here on FanDuel. That would be Eddie Lacy. He only popped up $300 on FanDuel. He was $6,500 in Week 7. So $6,800 here, in my opinion, is a steal for Eddie Lacy against a weak rush defense. You're looking at a guy who's been getting, 22, 23 plus carries the last 3 weeks. So, I mean, for that price, Eddie Lacy, in my opinion, even though I passed on him last week, in my opinion, this week, he's almost in that must-play territory there with that pricing. And no one here is stepping up. I think Reggie Bush could have a fairly large game against a weak Cowboys defense, but 8,100 is I guess, probably a fair price tag on him. Marshawn Lynch has a great matchup against the St. Louis Rams on Monday night. If you're just looking for some Monday night action, why not play Marshawn Lynch? 8,600 again I think is a fair price for Marshawn. And then once you kind of hit the top here, you're gonna get what you pay for. Adrian Peterson, I think, at least I would hope that Musgrave comes back with a little more ground and pound against the Green Bay Packers. And in some situations, you actually see offensive coordinators overcompensate for their shortfalls the week before. Their offensive game plan, or the Vikings' offensive game plan in Week 7 was obviously atrocious. So I think you could see and you should see a Vikings offense in Week 8 that is primarily focused on and centered around Adrian Peterson. Now we're going to go take a look at the wide receiver position here. This is not my first time looking through the salaries. I did this a couple times before already. So I do know there's really not a whole lot of min price guys that we're going to be looking at too closely. Stephen Hill burned me in week 7. He just really simply didn't do what I was expecting at all. I thought he was going to get more targets than the 5 that he did receive, and he unfortunately was able to only convert on 1 of those. So he's simply not worth the risk at this point in time. But he is definitely a big play threat. We can continue to scroll up here, and once again, as you take a look at the names, you're not going to see anyone here that's really worth mentioning. I mean, you might get some of these guys that are going to get luck into a touchdown. I can see Leonard Hankerson certainly getting some garbage time points this week, but he's not going to warrant a start as the risk once again just outweighs the reward. Cordarrelle Patterson, this would be an interesting play maybe in a couple of weeks here to see what sort of chemistry he can develop with Freeman if he continues to be a starter. Certainly has big playability, and if the Vikings look to get him the ball more, he could be an interesting play down the road, but is certainly not someone that you're going to look to start here in Week 8. You continue to go up, and you're seeing guys that, some names you recognize, Miles Austin, Tavon Austin. They're just not getting the attention or the targets that would warrant a safe start at the $4,500 range. Nick Toon is someone who is interesting to me. It's obviously going to kind of depend on how the situation plays out with Jimmy Graham. I think if Graham is out, Toon as well as Benjamin Watson could receive a little bit bump in value. So I don't mind taking a closer look at both Nick Toon and Kenny Stills, I believe. Yeah, here's Kenny Stills for $4,600. I think either one of those could very possibly be playable this week. If you take a closer look through the injury reports as the weeks progresses, both those guys could be kind of intriguing plays here this week against a weak Buffalo Bills defense. I know a lot of people are going to tell you Denarius Moore for only $5,400. I can see the justification for it. I don't think it's going to be a play I make this week, but $5,400, it's certainly a possibility. I do actually like Michael Floyd this week, especially for the $5,900 price tag. I think he's continuing to get his fair share of targets here. I wouldn't play, obviously, Michael Floyd and Andre Ellington on the same team, but I think both of them could warrant a little further consideration, a little more digging into the statistics and their past game logs. James Jones is someone else. I think Boykin is priced a little too high for my liking now. He did receive a lot of targets and get a touchdown last week, but I think at $6,300 he's a pass. But conversely, I think James Jones at $6,200, if he is able to go in Week 8, should warrant some consideration. The next couple guys I see that stick out to me here would be in the $6,700 price range. I think Pierre Garçon and Antonio Brown are pretty solid plays this week. Antonio Brown obviously is a target monster, and he's waiting to break out like he did in that would have been, I think, Week 3 against, I can't even recall, I think it was against the Bears. Yeah, it was against the Bears. I could see another performance here coming up for Antonio Brown. It's only a matter of time as he receives a ridiculous amount of targets each week. Now we're getting into once again, the chalky range here. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I mean, choose your Denver weapon. I do think both Welker and Demaryius Thomas will probably have solid games here this week, and more than likely will pay off their price tag. But anytime you play a receiver in that Denver Bronco offense, you're really risking kind of cannibalization from the other wide receivers. And then once we go up here, Dez, Calvin, AJ, they all have fairly decent matchups. But then again, you're getting what you pay for. And then tight end here will be the last position that we look at. I'm not going to bother with a kicker or a defense. So if we start scrolling through the tight end position here, I don't recall what Jeff Cumberland did in last week in week 7. I know I saw him get a catch a little earlier on the game. He has been a decent target for Geno Smith, so 4,500. He wouldn't be the worst tight end punt in the world, but I don't think he's really worth the play this week. Benjamin Watson, again, I mentioned if Jimmy Graham's unable to go, I think he actually receives a decent boost in value. But once again, this isn't my first time going through the pricing here on FanDuel this week, so I do know, and I will say that I don't think any of these guys in the 45 to 5,000 range are really worth playing. I think there's plenty of value out there, as you'll see when we scroll up. I know Charles Clay has been a touchdown machine lately, but like I said, I think there's too much value once we get up here and towards the mid 5,000 range that you can't pass up on this value to play someone cheaper. Jordan Reed, 9 receptions on 9 targets for a touchdown and 100-plus yards in Week 7. Has a great matchup here in Week 8. And for 5,400, I think he actually is probably underpriced. Another guy that is hugely underpriced this week would be Tony Gonzalez, $5,600 against the defense that has been worse against the tight end so far this year, and the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's an absolute steal. Obviously, Julio is gone. I'm not sure what the update on Roddy White is at this point in time, but if White's unable to go, it again leaves the Falcons with limited options, which we saw last week can actually kind of hurt Gonzalez's value in some instances. But in this instance, for this price, I think Tony Gonzalez is a really good play this week. And then, once you get kind of to the higher end here, Gronk and Graham, if he is able to go, both have amazing matchups this week. Both are obviously extremely solid plays if you decide to spend money this week on tight end, because both their matchups are just amazing this week, and both are going to get those receptions and those targets. It's just a matter of if they can pay off in the end zone or not. Well, that is, it looks like it for tight ends. Like I said, I'm not going to really scroll through kickers and defenses here. I will make a comment and let FanDuel know I do appreciate the kind of change in defensive pricing that we've seen here the last couple of weeks. We've seen them increase the range here. I don't think we've had anyone break the $6,000 mark yet this year. I think we had the Chiefs at 6,000 last week, which is the highest we've seen so far this year. But now we're getting a couple of defenses that are a little higher priced, which I do like. So I want to give props to FanDuel for that. But that's really it for this. If you want me to go through defenses, I will say for the low price defenses, I don't mind the Saints for 5,100. But if you're going to spend on defense, obviously any of these higher tiered options are great options this week. Seattle on Monday night against the Rams, who are going to be starting a backup quarterback. I think they probably get my vote as best defense this week, but I would put the Chiefs as a close second, followed then by the 49ers. But that's going to do it here for this week's FanDuel, lineup rundown. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to hit me up on Twitter. at MrTuttle05. I would also be more than happy to answer any questions. If you have any, go ahead and post them in the forums on fantasyinsiders.com.